I feel like I've achieved something today.
Okay.
Yes, you made us live.
Okay, so this presentation was originally assigned to John Hatton, but since he's flying, he's not able to do it. I don't know what was fully conceived for this presentation, but as someone who's labeled as a product owner, I think Mike asked me to sort of lead a discussion on it, and just sort of some background from my perspective. I sort of got thrown into the product owner role when Susanna left last June, over a year ago. I kind of by de facto became the Fieldworks product owner, I guess. Fieldworks has multiple projects that have gone through the prioritization process. So at the time, I was product owner for Fieldworks 8, and then I started working on the proposal for Fieldworks Dictionary, and there's going to be one for Fieldworks Import, and there's any other number of Fieldworks projects. I also became the product owner for the We Say for Linux project, and periodically Greg asks me questions for Pathway, and I don't usually have very much to give him. And then other product owner I'm aware of, John Hatton is product owner for We Say and Say More and Hear This and Bloom. And there's probably some others. I mean, I think Paratext has one project and one product owner. That's clear, but I'm feeling overloaded because I think I'm officially half-time with LS Dev, and I'm trying to manage about 5 projects at the same time. But it's not really clear who else would pick up that role. So, I mean, I think, and I've heard people talk about Analyst, I've heard people talk about product owner, and often people come and ask me UI questions, and I don't consider myself a UI person or a UX person. So maybe we need some clarity of what is our ideal, what is our goal? Do we have analysts? Do we have product owners? Do we want, what do we want? I mean, I was just at Certified Scrum Product Owner training, and they talked about a hierarchy of product owners, a chief product owner with individual ones under it for different projects. And related words kind of happened without any product owner on it. So this is intended to be a conversation, and this document sort of lists some of the questions. So I think it's just supposed to be interactive. So maybe we can kind of go through some of it, and Mike said he would take notes. And I don't even know if this is the right order to go through things, but I mean, maybe a good place to start is what are the responsibilities of a product owner or analyst? What are some of the things that this person does? And I guess people can just type or talk. What works?
It seems to me that that there's some overlap between a product owner and an analyst, but they're not necessarily the same thing. A product owner kind of controls the scope and direction of the product and says, what is its role in the overall work, whereas the analyst is more dealing with the specific UI things, specific user interactions, and things like that, and probably requires a little bit more technical savvy and a little bit more experience in user interaction and things like that. So I think one person can sometimes fill both those roles, but they're not necessarily the same thing. And then I think when it comes to any particular feature, the product owner could delegate to another person and say, you really own this feature. You can direct how, within the broad scope of the whole product, you can kind of direct how this thing works. And that, again, that could be the analyst, or it could be somebody else who says, I understand this task, even though I don't necessarily broadly control the whole product. I understand this task well enough. I can give the direction that's needed for the scope of this part of this feature round of development.
We've made changes with Paratext recently in that on individual features, not tiny features, but things that are like 3 days or more, we've appointed a person called a feature coordinator. 3 of us on the team that take turns to do that. And coordinator actually has final say for interacting directly with users and figuring out exactly what it's going to do, and also for at least proposing the initial UI. And so rather than having one project, in the past, one group, as product owner, I tried to do that, but it just became overwhelming, and it became clear to me that it wasn't really getting the attention it deserved. So we're trying this other plan of dividing it up. We've also got, for UI issues, we've got a separate committee of 3 people that are going to make decisions about UI issues rather than asking the product owner to do that. So what I see as my role as product owner at Paratex at the moment is mostly about coordinating the process and making sure there's a process in place so that every feature and decision that needs to gets made by some reasonable process, not really by, in most cases, just doing it myself, but by managing the process.
So in the Scrum test I was in, it talks about the Scrum Master and the product owner and I think maybe a tech lead, and then there's the team. So is the analyst someone that would be on the team? We're not really following Scrum. I mean, it feels like we're sort of mixing paradigms a little bit.
To me, the analyst sounds like what we're calling for the person responsible for figuring out the detail of what a specific feature has to do.
And do we have both an analyst and a product owner?
Paratex, we do.
One of the questions I put in there on the second, you said the relationship between the product owner and the champ. Now, where does champion, is there a product owner, analyst, and champion? Are there 3 things or 2?
Well, okay, in our product or prioritization process, we've talked about needing a champion, and we kind of want for that to be a domain person, and often we have felt like that champion may not be someone who was cut out to be a product owner. They may be perceived as a key stakeholder. But, I mean, so that's some of why, I mean, by putting relationship between product owner and champion, sort of it's a question, are they the same or not? I think in some cases they can be, in other cases they need to not be.
At Paratex, we're asking our feature coordinators for these major features to identify at least 2 or 3, people in the field that can be their main advisor to give field input on what's happening. I would think the champion would be, in this case, the champion had a role in getting things started. We'd also want at least that person to be at least one of the people. Maybe we should just call it analyst in order to have a single terminology here that the analyst talks to.
Is the champion more like a user representative?
Yes. The domain expert, I would say.
So the champion is fundamentally a user, whereas the product owner and analyst, neither one of those may be users. Both of them tend to be technical people. UI design of an analyst is not necessarily a user function because it takes special training. Product owner is not necessarily a user function because so champion is fairly different than both product owner and analyst.
So in the way we've been functioning on Fieldworks, I have been considering myself product owner, and I don't feel like we have an analyst.
Well, a product owner could do an analyst function for a given feature if they had time.
And skill.
Partly depends on how big of a project or product it is. If you have a very small product, you might have one person, well, theoretically, filling all three, being the champion, the owner, and the analyst. But
Okay.
And implementing it.
Okay, I'm gonna divide this out a little bit.
Yeah, 'cause I think it's confusing where it is now.
So if you put analyst things under product owner, move them down into the new section.
What about someone just added product steward? Is that the same as product owner now, or is that a new thing?
Campbell, did you add product steward?
Yeah, I did.
You want to speak to that?
With the product steward there, that's more like it's really heading towards the idea of program management or portfolio management. Somebody is responsible for all of our approved products. So like when we're talking about a development task, a feature's already been approved, really the communication with the user community is probably actually handled by the product owner or the analyst. But when the feature's done and it's shipped and the product's in maintenance mode, it would be handled by the steward. So I guess I'm saying that maintaining communication with the community, user community, goes through different phases of who's responsible for it depending on what's being done.
While it's quiet, I'll just comment. This morning, Beth and I were trying to chat. I'm supposed to be directing the India test team, and we're discussing, well, what's more important, send, receive, weekly, or flex? And the answer is yes. And it's like, I don't even know who to talk to get priorities.
Do you want a third bullet or a fourth bullet point for the champion? You have now you've got one for owner, steward, analyst.
yes.
A fourth one for the champion then?
I guess. Do we need to list responsibilities of the champion? Okay, yeah.
Someone's adding that already.
Oops.
Take a tab away from
I'm
it.
trying.
There you go.
We're fighting. We're dueling.
I'll let you finish it.
Well. I mean, so this is confusing to me because some of the things listed under analyst are what I thought were responsibilities of product owner. But anyway.
That's what you learned.
They can often be the same thing. The only difference I would say is that a product owner has responsibility for the totality of the product at all times. Whereas an analyst may have that responsibility as well, but with analysts, we're really talking in the context of a particular feature or a feature set. So, for example, like a product could have 5 analysts working on 5 different features at a time. There'd be nothing to stop that. But an analyst, if they're just the analyst on a feature, they don't have the overall responsibility for the entire product, so they can't make product level calls.
So when you say feature, do you mean something like what we have as projects going through the prioritization process?
Yeah, yeah, a whole bunch of features, and you might have an analyst assigned to that, and they're responsible for that particular phase of work.
I would say that analysis and prioritization are 2 roles which a project owner has, but in some cases they're going to be delegated to others, and in smaller projects, the project owner do it themselves. But project owner has to make sure it happens somehow.
I wonder if some of this depends on whether the project also has a manager, if you want another term to throw in there.
Two things, Beth. We do need to keep the discussion going. Also, I did put in a link to a document where when we first started doing agile processes, we had this debate in detail and came up with a strategy. I'm not saying it's still what we should do. At that time, with what we knew, this is what we had defined. And so I put that up there just for history's sake, not to imply this is the model we should use. Over.
So, I mean, I think my half should be ending in about 3 minutes. Where do we want to go, and do we want both product owner and analyst, and how do we get more product owners, and do we have any UX people for any of our products?
Well, John Hatton certainly has considerable UX expertise.
But so what about the other?
Free time.
Yeah. I mean, if Flex needs UI stuff done,
We have John Head do it.
yeah, let's ask John to do it.
That would be a redesign of Flex.
No, but I mean, there's a new
Well,
dialogue.
if we had any, I'm just saying we do have one at least still.
Okay.
And we have some of Susanna's time.
I think John Hatton made an interesting comment in the run-up to this conference that we probably do have some developers who are actually good at thinking about UI, and we might be well served to actually spend some of that time. So those developers that we kind of agree make pretty things should probably think about spending some of their time and possibly making themselves available for that. So that's something we can think about moving forward.
But I think it's important to identify who those people are, because there's plenty of developers who are bad at it.
Right, right. And we won't call any of them out by name.
I think they're good at it.
But I mean, I think we need to be clear on who is good, right?
Right.
There are also different aspects of it too. I mean, somebody may be good at sort of actually outlining, what set of controls will let you accomplish a particular task, and somebody else will be much better at figuring out, okay, what should the labels be on those buttons that will make sense to an end user, and somebody else again might be good at saying, okay, and how should they be arranged in the dialogue, and what should be aligned with what, and what colors should be used.
I mean, I think I probably would put myself in the category of someone who's bad at it. I mean, I might have some skills at it, but I mean, I don't particularly want to do it, but I care that it be done well. So I want it to be done well.
I think I sometimes have some good ideas about it, but I know I need somebody to refine what I come up with, at least.
So I'm not quite sure where we want to. I mean, is there a way of getting people outside the department to? I mean, how would we recruit a new? Okay. Does a product owner need to be recruited from within department, or can we find someone from outside? Now, it's hard having this conversation without John Hatton because he has very clear opinions on it. He sent me a document about why most product owners suck. It's a PDF I can. And John's point to me was the product owner doesn't have to know all the ins and outs, but they have to be good at requirements gathering, they have to be good at communicating with the stakeholders, they have to be good at saying, no, we don't have to do that. They're kind of ones that yeah, they prioritize, and they say what not to do as well as what to do. They have to be good at talking to the users and not necessarily let their own opinions influence the thing, but reflect the opinions of the users. So, I mean, requirements gathering.
One of the places to look for more talent is to go to your local graphic artist and show them what your screen looks like, and then tell them that you will actually listen to them.
The issue is not with the UI. I mean, the UI may suck terribly, but the issue is not so much with the UI. It's with you didn't map the task into the software to start with, so no matter what UI you come up with, it's going to be like being dragged across rocks.
mean, the
Sorry,
list,
Chuck.
go ahead, Susanna.
I guess for me, the other way to look at this is how do you retain the people you already have? Because I think for me, that's been a bit of an issue. If you look at over the years, there have been a lot of good analysts or product owners who've left, and I think I became very demoralized. So if you're someone who's carrying a lot of weight of responsibility of prioritizing or whatever it might be, and I think a good thing about product owner is that they feel they own the products. They have this massive sense of ownership. The danger of them getting demoralized is incredibly high. So I feel like that's something you need to address with new people taking on this role.
What I learned in the product owner training is that I'm the single wringable neck.
Yeah, nobody likes
I can go ring
One person who is responsible for the end result.
That's a great way to keep someone around.
You know, as a non-developer, I can't do anything. I have no power directly. Can't do a thing.
With the using the web-based application, it does give you a little bit more power to go in and tweak things. So making our software more amenable to a designer making modifications helps give more power to those people.
We may be able to better use what user interface or user interaction design talent we can find if we don't try to make the same person also responsible for prioritizing everything and analyzing all the bugs and so forth. And they're not necessarily the same task.
I mean, when I was in the product owner training, I asked that question: is product owner responsible for UX or UI? And the very clear answer was no.
Yeah, Nathan just outlined how in Paratext he's delegated that to a group of three, but you're going to delegate that some to Mark, some to Ian up in the UK.
Another very important concept is user interface testing. You know, one of the things I constantly read about user interface is you can do all the design you want, but you won't always succeed. You have to try it on real users, which has to mean people who aren't involved in programming it and don't already know all about it.
Yes. So Nathan's system that he mentioned has that. When he delegates, he calls it a UI coordinator. They get to design it, they need to mock it up and show it to users before it gets to coding. And after it gets coded, part of their job is to make sure users like it. And if users don't like it, the user coordinator's job to get it fixed.
We're also hopeful that this year, we've heard that there's some reasonable possibility that E10 might be willing to fund an additional position of UI tester for Paratext. So we're going to at least apply for that and see if that can happen.
Well, I don't know if we've reached any conclusions, but have I reached the end of the time? I mean,
Are you off the hot seat?
Writing in the document, so I'm not watching the clock.
Sounds like it might be a time when we need to pray for the right recruit.
Well, okay, maybe I would like some clarity on whether, I mean, maybe this isn't the time, but it feels like a disconnect that some people are expecting the product owner to be analyst, and I'm expecting not. I mean, I am expecting to do requirements gathering, I am expecting to do prioritization, I am expecting to do acceptance testing, but I'm not expecting to do UI design. And then maybe we don't need a unified decision across all products.
It feels to me as though until we find a very talented person who wants to primarily do UI design, then we just have to do the best we can. You know, you're either going to do it or you're going to delegate it to the programmer who's going to write it, and then somebody's going to try to correct it if it doesn't work.
Well, in the case of Fieldworks, I'm hoping Susanna might, you know, we have yet to see how timing works out, but I'm hoping Susanna can do that piece.
But if it's worth anything, Davey thinks you're doing a great job.
I've given Lisa so little.
Sorry, did someone ask me to say something?
No, we just asked you to do more work.
I guess we're very interested to know how available you might be when to help design any UIs.
We'll have to see how life goes.
She's not setting up, and especially the fact that it's fixing the fact
Mike, where do you want it to go?
I decided there was no new UI.
Might be interesting if you
Does Mike Cochran feel like we're done?
get a storm.
Right. Yeah, Mike feels like we're done.
I think that we've collected enough information to continue processing this later. Obviously, we're not going to solve all these things here, but we have a lot of good information down. So I'd like to switch over to Doug Higbee at this point. We'll give Doug 30 minutes. So I'm gonna
Okay, hi everybody. I'll try to present my screen here. Okay, let me know if you're seeing my presentation.
Yeah.
How has our customer changed?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So, yeah, I wanted to touch on this topic because I do feel that our customer has changed and is changing significantly. So, one of the questions, I was looking at a presentation that Gary Simons gave recently, and he was talking about the beneficiaries of SM, which relates largely to who our customer is. So, but Gary says that the current perception of the majority of our staff is that the main customer segment for our IT products and services is translators. And I do think we continually are talking about and thinking about the translator, or I guess the literacy worker, as we are talking about our products. But then Gary goes on to say that in order to be in alignment with SIL Board's ENDS policy, the board talks about 4 different beneficiary groups of our work. And that is the academic and professional communities, 2, governmental and other policy-making bodies, 3, the church worldwide, and 4, the language communities themselves. So the translator or literacy worker or whatever falls in this list, but kind of embedded in the language community aspect, which is number 4 here. So Gary promotes that changing this perception that we have to align with the board policy will result in a compelling story of how we serve millions. Also, it will dramatically improve the achievement of our ends, and it will offer the potential of a sustainable economic engine. So you may be aware that the language services department is trying to think up ways that we could monetize some of the services we provide. But at Bloom for a minute. Okay, so Bloom is kind of a good example of what I'm talking about here. So as we shift our development focus from SIL literacy projects to the international community and their demands and requirements that they put on us to get Bloom in the shape that they want it, we end up gaining capabilities and a momentum which we would have not have achieved by ourselves. Now it's still a bit early to say because we're still working on Bloom, but we definitely have a different audience for this version of Bloom. And some of the benefits that I see from our new customer target for Bloom is that suddenly we're going to have credibility in the international community. Bloom may be a standard, and many organizations will use it to produce literature in different languages. And in some cases, this will be more effective than were we to try to push Bloom just within SIL. We can often have some reluctant people who are not fond of new technologies and things that are produced, and I'm sure there's people in this crowd here who have been burned by producing something that in the end people didn't want to use. But now if the international community is taking up Bloom and they are the ones heralding it, suddenly we will be able to pull along our own reluctant adopters with the momentum that we get from the international community. And then we also get outside partners who are contributing to our ends by producing templates that we can use and other things that are part of this body. So we get a lot of benefits from shifting our customer focus from the SIL literacy worker to the international community of literacy workers. So we also have a change in focus recently. We're looking at providing services in the language programs department. So as we are focusing on becoming a service provider, this also changes our customer focus. And part of the exercises that we're doing is to excuse me. We are having to come up with service plans and services that we can provide in the academic departments. And we're supposed to call out which customers we are envisioning these services to be for. So take for example Fieldworks and we could target the translator and make the translator our focus for these lexical apps. But if we make our lexical data platform and services the go-to standard for the world, SIL will benefit from the availability of others' data that we can use in our own projects. So in another presentation that Gary Simons did, he talked about our dictionary customers. And he lists these. Anyone who is compiling a lexicon using our software. Anyone looking for a dictionary of a minority language. Anyone doing research about the languages of the world. Institutions whose personnel do research about the languages of the world. And organizations that want to repurpose content from one or many dictionaries. So if we turn our focus and we start looking at more of an international community of all these different customers who could use our products, suddenly we have a growing database of these kinds of linguistic resources, such as could be kept in Language Forge, and we will in the end benefit for our own teams having use of these resources. So, and I think this is the last slide here, but I just also wanted to call out that there is a change, not only when we switch to a service focus, but also as we shift maybe to a more mobile focus. Suddenly, we don't think so much of translation app on a cell phone for a we think, why would the translator want to be restricted by such a small screen? And so, but if we change our focus from the translator to the language community, it requires us to think differently about designing these applications. Suddenly, we're not concerned so much about making the translator being able to do translation more efficiently with a cell phone, but we're looking at ways that the community can both benefit from the translation as well as possibly contribute to the translation by harnessing the crowd so that they can have some involvement. And the crowd is definitely a different focus that we didn't have many years ago. Or even a few years ago. We weren't thinking in terms of the crowd as our customer in designing apps. The second thing that a mobile focus does for us is it forces us to simplify our approach. So rather than focusing on the customer who can handle all the complexities of a computer interface, by definition, anything on a cell phone has to be push button simple. And so as we focus on that different customer, we're also going to gain some benefits in streamlining the focus of our tasks. Rather than give the customer 20 different tasks to choose from, the cell phone app is going to have 1 or 2 tasks that it's specifically designed for. And it's going to make us think more thoroughly about who that customer is and what we want to accomplish for them. So that's the end of the presentation part. So now we can open it up to this topic. Go ahead and speak out.
I had a question. When you talked about Bloom and the international community being a primary user, are you talking about something that's happening now or something you would like to see happen?
I'm talking about what is happening as a result of the scale up of Bloom for the international competition, where it's what is it, World Vision and some other groups have put together some prize money that the Bloom team is competing to win at this point. And so there are a number of requirements that are being put out by these funding agencies that are changing the focus then of Bloom so that we can compete in order to win the prize.
I have a question, Doug.
Go ahead.
Doug, do you see any dangers in shifting the customer focus like this?
Well, I think it would be a shame if we became so preoccupied with the international community and others that we stopped benefiting our translators and field workers. However, I do see that many of these shifts in focus will ultimately help our end users that we care about the most. And I think we'll have to wait and see, because a lot of this is still in its youth. But time will tell as we start to do more of a service focus.
Yeah, we had
one more question.
a similar issue with COG, the champion, and I have talked a lot about COG is a survey. It's mainly used by surveyors to do wordless comparison, but it's very much based off of comparative linguistics and historical linguistic concepts, and we really could expand it into being more of a tool that would really have an impact more widely in the linguistic community. And so we talked a lot about doing this, but we had a hard time thinking about, would this thing make it through the prioritization process? If it's just as much for, external for the linguistic community as it is for us and SIL, is this really a priority? And, so we weren't sure how to proceed with something like that.
Doug, I have another question. On the 7th slide, you talked about SIL gaining credibility with the international community, but I'm thinking that you weren't meaning to imply by that we didn't already have credibility with the international community. After all, I think that we're currently managing the ISO language codes for the international community, which seems like a lot of credibility. And I guess my question is there anything we can learn from the fact that the international community continually tries to take away that role from us because they don't really want a quote-unquote missions organization managing and contributing at that level?
I've got a comment. If Doug isn't going to answer or interact with what Greg asked, but I'm not sure I buy the argument that you can either, provide tools for our translators to support the ends of the corporation, or you can provide tools for the international community to accomplish the ends of the organization. It seems like providing tools for our own field teams is a means to accomplish the ends, and within the policy governance framework, the ends are part of it. That is perfectly fine to deal with the means of accomplishing the ends. And so I think it's perfectly fine to provide tools for the translators to accomplish those ends, instead of having to change the customer to somebody else, some other more global.
Sorry, I bugged out, but I'm back now, I think. So Greg was last saying, is there anything we can learn?
Yeah, that was my question. Is there anything we can learn from SIL being the language reference organization in terms of bullish?
Oops.
I think there is. If I can comment, this is Victor. One of the big issues with that ISO situation is not the nature of our organization, but whether we're doing anything or not. For a long time, our responsiveness on the ISO language codes was abysmal. We didn't put out updates, we didn't respond to people, and I think that is just one example that says if we really want to be recognized as experts in an area, then we can't just serve internally. We have to build our reputation out there so that people are willing to invest back in the sort of things that are going to benefit us. We've seen a huge payoff of that with our fonts and writing systems areas, where we have, we're out there in the community on the Unicode committee who work in the design industry, and because of that, because we have shifted our focus away from the individual translator and to the language community themselves, we've seen a huge difference in SIL's reputation. And as a result, there are people out there who definitely do not agree with our beliefs or our purposes, but who recognize what we do and even promote what we do to other people because they think we're doing an excellent job. And I think that can go across the board with our software because we write some really good software. The trouble is sometimes we're a bit short-sighted in who our customers are. And so I think Doug's presented that very well.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. And just in response to Greg about SIL's credibility, no, I don't think we've achieved the maximum credibility in the literacy community that we ought to have. I think maybe Bloom is kind of a shift in focus of feeding language communities the materials we want them to have, to enabling them to produce more of their own materials. And I think that shift in focus will be seen by the international community as something wonderful, is a shared goal, and that they will work together with us on.
Randy, can you repeat your question or comment close to the mic, please? One that you did.
Is Doug still on? Or last time I spoke, that whole circle was off.
Yeah, Doug was off last time he spoke, so if you could lean in a little bit and repeat your comment.
I don't know if you heard, I guess you didn't hear what I said, but basically I objected to saying that that the translators were not a useful part of our focus in software development, but it had to be more directly for the ends, the customers, for the language community. Providing tools for our translators who are accomplishing the ends is a perfectly fine means to accomplish the ends. If we just provided the tools for translators and that was the end of the story, that would be a different problem. But the policy governance system that we're working under allows for any number of means to accomplish the end, unless excluded by executive limitations. And so I'm not sure that I buy the statement that the customer is either the translator or the language communities.
So, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I agree. Obviously, the target for paratext is going to be the translator. So this isn't necessarily applicable to every piece of software that we write. However, for tools for the various domains, we want to be making them useful for the translator, but I think we're going to have trouble embracing the new direction of being service-oriented that is being talked about quite a bit now in the international circles. If we continue to, if we make the translator only focus, I think we often lose sight of some of the greater potential that we can achieve by using the crowd. It's a way of by gaining more users who may not be our primary target user, we in the end benefit, and I think that's kind of what I'm trying to point out here.
Well, I don't object to using a variety of means to accomplish the end, crowdsourcing or whatever, but that wasn't what I think I was hearing. you know, it sounded like the translator was like the consumer and the end in itself and end of story, and so we needed to shift to a broader thing to accomplish the ends of the corporation. And I'm still not sure that I agree with it, even though we can certainly expand to include other means. So I don't object to that. So.
I think it's important. I agree with Doug. Having worked in Tanzania in the project where a lot of these translators, the communities know that these translators are like, you know, meeting in this city away from their communities, and they're working on this project. They might have some awareness of that, but they never see them, they never interact with them, and so the awareness of, you know, the communities that those translators represent, they either really don't know much about us, or they don't really feel part of the process. If we can use crowd resourcing and, you know, and involve them, they can get more excited about it and really even have a better relationship with the translators, because they see, oh, I'm a part of this process too. I could see how that.
I also don't think it's a question of saying we either serve translators or the broader community, because often the broader community work that we do is the best way we can serve the translators. You know, examples of there are software things out there, bits of Linux, bits of Windows that we don't have control over. But if we participate in the communities that are out there, and if we target our software to serve them like we've done with Graphite, well, then the people who are in influence and have control integrate those, and that is our means of serving translators. It's not instead of. It is the best way to serve the translators. So I don't think it's an either or.
Yeah, I mentioned that it was not an XOR kind of a deal in my original talk that only went so far, I guess. So.
I've got my
we
hand
have
up.
we have talked about this is Wes Peacock. We've
I'd like
talked
to make
about
a comment about crowdsourcing. Like crowdsourcing is well, it's not really a term I like to use in the context of some of what we do, because the crowd that we address is often very small. So some of our applications, like ScriptureForge and LanguageForge, our web applications, have certainly gone outside the audience of the translator and the close team. And the crowd that we're addressing at the moment is the next layer out. And in the context of ScriptureForge, for example, we've seen that expand the team reach from maybe 6 individuals to around about 70 or 80 regular users. So, you know, when you compare it with crowdsourcing in the literature, you know, they're talking about thousands and millions. Well, the crowd in our context, I think, is more like 60 or 70, and that's still a good number. That's what we're seeing at the moment.
Wes Peacock here. One of the things that we have talked about is talked about the old customer as a translator, whereas a translator is actually not a single prototype, but it is actually
Campbell used up so Mike can talk.
Sorry, did I do that?
Wes Peacock here. We've talked about the translator as seeming to be a single entity, whereas there are different tasks and different things that different hats that translators wear that are considerably different. The literacy worker is considerably different from a person who's doing actual translation work. The person who's doing translation work often has project management issues that can vary quite considerably. So it's not really fair to talk about translator as a single entity, but you have different functions that are with different hats that the translator is wearing.
Okay, so this has been a very good discussion. I appreciate it. I'm afraid we need to move on to the next, I think, lightning talk, second lightning talk here. I think there's 3 people involved in that one. And so, Doug, thank you for your presentation, and thank you everybody for sharing your thoughts. I think it's as usual, a complicated picture, and luckily God is in control, and we need to do our best to figure this out and then move in directions that we feel like he's moving us. And part of it is having discussions like this, and discussions like this with the domain people that we're interacting with and with the communities that we serve at some point. So let's move to the lightning talks now. Over.
Start a new hangout.